Now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
We continue the series of sermons during Lent, reaching today the story of Lazarus. He has fallen asleep. I look around the congregation and see how many eyes are already closed, knowing how easy it is to fall asleep during a sermon. I knew one priest who, preaching from a pulpit like ours, was aware of some people falling asleep, and in that pulpit he had a large Bible which he dropped from shoulder height to the waist height and woke up everybody in church. I hope you've all had a good night's sleep. It does vary, doesn't it? We were told on the news yesterday that the night will be cold, so maybe you woke up and you felt yourself cold. Maybe you woke up and it was time to make a cup of tea halfway through the night. Maybe you woke up for some other reason and quickly went there. We all wake up during sleep. We wake up in the morning at about 7 o'clock to the news coming on the radio. The news tends to be bad at the moment. If one particular name is mentioned, I turn the radio off very quickly. We had news from Tom yesterday. The church that we know well in Jerusalem, Christ Church, had a rocket land very close to it. Tom and Catherine are now down in the south of Israel, having taken somebody to Egypt, and they're, I guess, swimming in the sea. News comes good and bad in a variety of ways. Sometimes it is the news on the radio or the television, the newspaper, or personal post to you, phone or email. Some of us are old enough to remember the coming of post when the envelope had a black edge all the way round it, and we knew before opening it that it was about somebody passing away. News came to Jesus face to face. Lord, the one whom you love is sick. That sort of statement demands a response. And Jesus' response was, this will not end in death, but that God will be glorified. We could never begin to understand death, although we know we will all experience it in one way or another. Down at the pub, it is the forbidden subject. But Christians should be able to talk about it with reassurance. Many of us perhaps have walked through a cemetery and looked at the stones. I had somebody in my parish who collected the sayings from different stones in churchyards. We used to go on holiday to the town of Winchelsea in Sussex, and if I was to take you there today, I could take you to a particular stone on which are the words, I told them I was sick. Yes, Spike Milligan is now buried there. Whoever we are, wherever we are, we will experience sickness and death in loved ones, friends, and neighbours, near or far. When Jesus received the news of Lazarus' illness, Jesus was 35 miles away, the other side of the Jordan at Bethabara, and faced the long uphill walk to Bethany with his disciples. He had already delayed for 2 days, and it would have taken 2 days at least to walk that distance. It's interesting to remember that Martha and Mary, being good Jewish people, believe that the Spirit lingered for 3 days after death. Jesus delayed for 4 days. Martha and Mary believed in the resurrection, yet they and Jesus wept together. I have found, having taken funerals for some 60 years now, that silence is sometimes better than words. And yet funerals demand words, and I have to see somebody in this coming week to plan her husband's funeral. Which words are suitable, because they're all different for everybody? Jesus' response to Mary and Martha was in fact the great and 7th I am of John's Gospel. I am the resurrection and the life. If any of you are already dozing in this sermon, I am the resurrection and the life, because that is our Christian hope, that is our Christian assurance, that is what we know to be true. Martha responds with, I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God. These two ladies had a Christian faith, and yet they still said, both of them, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. That is a big demand, and yet they said those words. And Jesus' response was a prayer. Wisely he spoke to his Father. Father, I know that you hear me. You always hear me. And so the dreadful sadness and probably Jewish wailing around that tomb echoed with the words, the famous 3 words of this long chapter, Lazarus, come out. Lazarus came out. I stood at that tomb. In fact, I saw a film of it just this last week. It would have been dramatic because it's in the middle of the village, unlike many a cemetery. Lazarus, come out. Amazement, joy, reunion. A thrilling moment, but eventually Lazarus would die again. But the whole point of this particular chapter of John, well before the final chapter of 21, is that it prefigures Jesus' own resurrection. This is what is going to happen to me after days of suffering. So, what does such a chapter say to us? Whenever we face bereavement, and I know many of you have, as we have, we know the divine and human Jesus empathizes with our grief. Jesus is God. Jesus is man. He's been there. He's known the pain in his own body. He's known suffering, loss, separation. Jesus would have known the death of his cousin John, Jairus' daughter, Joseph, perhaps his own earthly father, and now Lazarus. His words and this season lead us inextricably to the cross of Good Friday. But to his disciples, Jesus said, Lazarus has fallen asleep. I'm going to wake him up. In the old days of clergy training, many moons ago, we were brought up on a particular prayer of a fellow canon, Henry Scott Holland, which begins, death is nothing at all. I found that so difficult. I've never used it since. I changed the words through undertakers and families to death comes to us all. For those of us who have experienced a loss in the family, we could never say death is nothing at all. It leaves a great gap in all of our lives, and we know that gap today. Jesus says that although death comes to us all, there's nothing frightening about death, even though the way of dying we would wish to be pain-free and peaceful. There is nothing to fear as a Christian concerning death itself. Let's go back to the word sleep. Sleep is a gift we appreciate as a prelude to renewed activity. I'll say it again. Sleep is a gift we appreciate as a prelude to renewed activity. The day ahead, the life ahead, needs sleep. Remember, as you walked to church this morning, through the churchyard surrounding this building as a cemetery, what the word cemetery means. The place of sleep. Which is why on several of the stones behind me in this church, outside this church, the word sleep has been engraved on headstones. The psalm tells us he grants sleep to those he loves. Paul adds to it, we shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed. So the sorrow of Jesus, the loss to Mary and Martha, the comfort of any friends they had around them, the joy of the resurrection, if you like, an Easter early in Bethany. They will all know of the resurrection of Jesus in a few days' time. The raising of Lazarus foreshadows the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus' resurrection is the guarantee of your resurrection and mine. So, sleep peacefully tonight. Amen.